Which auction is better, Manheim or Copart? I've been using both platforms for years now as a car dealer, and it's given me a lot of insight to see which auction is better for what things. So I'm going to cover the pros and the cons of both so you can see what would be best to be able to build your business off of. Then at the end of the video, I also want to give you a good framework that you can use with either auction so you can know exactly what cars is in your budget to bid on, which cars to bid for, and different things like that. Let's get right into it. What's up, my name is Jamal from Flipping University. I help busy employees build a full-time business flipping cars without having any mechanical knowledge. And on a quick note, I'm also going to be doing a live training next week on how to double your income using car auctions. We're going to be going over the best auctions that you could use today, how to know exactly how much you should be bidding on cars, and how you're able to get into dealer auctions yourself. And then at the end of the training, I'm also going to be staying for a little while to just answer whatever questions you might have about the business as well. Make sure you register to the event. If you want to get access to that training, just go to the link in the description below and register for your spot. So the first auction we're going to talk about is Copart. We're going to be talking about the pros first. So the very first pro, just to really mention with Copart, is that realistically you can get cars for very cheap and way cheaper than how much they would usually be if you were just buying them off of Facebook Marketplace or something like that. There's cars out there that I've gotten that should have been selling around like $13,000 or so that I was able to get all the way back to like $5,000. Of course, we're going to get into a little bit of the specifics of that when we go into some of the cons as well, but just realistically, yes, you can get some great deals off of these cars. The next pro for Copart is that you don't need to be a dealer to have access to this site. Literally anyone can get access to this site. They do break it up into two different memberships, between like a basic membership and a premier membership with different prices for each. But regardless, you don't need to have a business or anything established to access this site. Anyone could jump in and get some great deals as well. The next pro for Copart is that this is just a great platform for being able to get parts for cars. I mean, just because of the fact that you can get cars for really cheap. If you're really just looking to have a whole business just about parting out cars and different things like that, and just making your own part store potentially, or if you have a certain car and you're just looking for a specific part for that car, as you're not trying to potentially just buy that one part off of eBay or something, this is great for that as well. The next pro that we're going to talk about is just about the fact that it's very easy to partner up with a business under Copart to get exclusive advantages. And if you don't know Copart, how it is some cars are available just to anyone and to the public and everything, and with some cars you do actually get an advantage if you have some type of business affiliated to be able to connect to Copart as well. But Copart does also give you easy ways to be able to connect with those businesses on their exact platform, so you don't have to be setting up your own business as well. And now for the cons of Copart, and the first one is probably one of the biggest cons, to be honest, which is just that it's a very high risk platform. Honestly, I wouldn't say this is something that just anyone should jump into. Like, let's say if you have no mechanical experience and you know nothing about the market, you haven't learned anything from anyone else, this could be something where you could jump into and lose a lot of money potentially quick. But at the same time, of course, on the flip side, it is kind of high risk, high reward, where you could take a lot of risk and potentially get a great deal from it as well. But realistically, you really have to know what you're doing with this. The next con for Copart is it's just very high fees with everything, and along with that, it's also a very kind of like complicated fee structure. It's not like other things where it's just simply a buy fee and that's it. Like, you'll basically get like buy fees, you'll get like a gate fee and a random auction fee, like just a bunch of different fees that, let's say by the time the sale ends, like you might buy a car that you would think is like $800 as the top bid that you might have won the car for, but then after everything else, the car is like $1,600 or something. So, and that's one thing you have to make sure that you're checking when you're on the site, which just makes things very confusing when you're going through the whole platform. And now for the next con for Copart, it would be that you can't test drive the cars, which is pretty annoying. Like, I mean, it kind of goes even with the whole high risk scenario where, these cars are cars that, need a lot of work in itself. Generally speaking, it's not like a bunch of like just easy cars to just buy and then flip right after. With that, like, you can't even test drive them. So let's say if it does have like a bad reverse or something like that, it's not going to be the easiest to be able to see what's exactly wrong with the car. So I just don't like that aspect. If it's going to be a high risk platform like this, it'd be nice if they at least gave you the chance to be able to really really test the car out. And the next con kind of goes along in a way with that last one, where it's also basically in that inspection process of the car. But not only can you not test drive the car, but you also can't use an OBD scanner or a diagnostic tool with the platform as well. So again, it's almost like they want you to buy bad cars in a way, like they want you to take insanely high risk, because I mean, a diagnostic tool, of course, for most people know, like if there is a big problem that's wrong with the car, that diagnostic tool will generally be able to show you most of what's going to happen after you get the car home. So the fact that you can't even do that, again, it's like, come on Copart, what are we doing here? Okay, and the next con for Copart is just the condition of the cars in general. Like, this isn't the type of platform where you can go get a car and, generally speaking, you expect to get something that you could just detail and then flip and sell right after. Most of these cars are going to be like rebuilt title cars that have had a lot of work on them in the past, salvage title cars, flood damage type of cars, you know, lost, stolen, like is these type of cars that the platform has primarily. And you know, unless you're willing to jump into like a big job like that to potentially get that high profit off the car, you're gonna be struggling to find something that is just like a really quick and easy thing to flip. Next con for Copart is that, from what I see, they're just not very transparent. Like, even with some of the listings that they might have, like they might say something like, oh, the car drives, but then it'll be where, all right, the car can drive, let's say, yes, it can go into first gear, but it can't shift through gears. Like it can't go into reverse. Like you really can't trust the things that they're saying. And with that, I would hope that if you're buying a car from Copart, you're actually going there in person to check out the cars in some way. But the fact that you can't really do things like testing out the car that much when you're there, and then even on the online platform, they're not really telling you that much about the car. Again, it makes things really sketchy with the whole platform. And the last con we're gonna get into for Copart is that you can really be bidding against people that are buying cars from like out of country. Like, it's a very competitive field. It's not just people that's in America that's buying the cars. Like, it could be people that's literally in, you know, I don't know, Venezuela or Brazil or, you know, Europe or something like that, that's also bidding on the car as well and trying to ship it back to their country. So it's gonna be tough as well in that aspect. Of course, the more competition, the more it'll be harder for you to get a good deal for a car yourself as well. Okay, now we're gonna go into the pros for Manheim. The first pro to really stay with Manheim is that you can test out the cars pretty well with the auction. So yes, you could do something like bring an OBD scanner. You know, you could bring a jumper pack if you want to jump the cars yourself. For most of the auctions, you can do a test drive. At the very least, you can put the car into reverse, go back a bit, and then put it back into its spot. And for a lot of auctions, or most auctions, you could also like drive down the lane and kind of test them out as well. So of course, completely opposite from Copart in that instance. The next pro with Manheim is that you can find cars where you potentially just need like a detail, and that's about it. Like, most cars there are not going to be things that need some heavy amount of work. Like, yes, there could be cars that are salvage or rebuild or something, or repossessions, but that's not like every car is like that. There's a lot of clean title cars and stuff that you can get where you could just do a couple of things with the car and then flip it right after. And the next pro for Manheim is that it's just a lot easier to just go one day and just really stock up on inventory that you might need going forward, especially if you're going to an auction that has like 5,000 cars in it or 10,000 cars. Like, you know, there's plenty of cars to choose from. There's a lot of cars that's going through in that one day. You could potentially go, if you have the money, and stock up on like 5-10 cars or so, you know, or more in that same day, and not have to be, you know, searching up online and keep checking into things to be able to get the right cars as well. And the next pro for Manheim is that it's really just like the industry standard to have wholesale pricing for cars. If you don't know already, MMR stands for Manheim Market Report, which of course comes from Manheim, and that's what most dealers and it's what most car dealers and everything would use to be able to get like what is just a general wholesale value of the car. So if you've been to an auction and you've just seen people walking around scanning up the VIN numbers of cars, they're using the Manheim app on their phone, and then they're just scanning it up to see what the pricing is. And it's nice that, you know, since Manheim is such a big platform and it owns so many different things, you could quickly just jump into the platform to be able to see something that's pretty important like that. Okay, now for the next pro from Manheim, which is just that there's a lot of Manheims nationwide. I mean, Manheim is the biggest auction house in America. There's a lot of different auction houses that you can choose from. I mean, you could probably search up Manheim right now and there might be like 3 or 4 within, let's say, potentially like an hour radius of you. And each Manheim might have like 1,000+ cars that's going through in that day of the week. So it's a really big auction. I mean, there's a reason why, you know, people usually bring up Manheim when they're talking about auctions and different things like that as well. And the next pro for Manheim is that it's just lower fees and just more straightforward fees compared to something like Copart. Of course, you know, with this, it's basically the opposite of what I was saying with that. Like with this, it's basically just, all right, you got buyer fees and that's about it. I mean, if you wanted to pay for transportation or something directly through Manheim, you could do that. But if not, like if you're just buying a car, buyer fees, that's it. If you're selling a car to them, seller fees, that's it. It's not a bunch of other fees that you're trying to break down and, you know, find out exactly what's going on with the sale. And now that's going to bring us into the cons for Manheim. And to be honest, that same thing I just said about the fees, yes, it's nice that the fees are lower compared to Copart, but I will say it is a little annoying that the fee structure per auction is a little different. It's not like it's just one just straightforward fee structure for literally every Manheim in America. Like let's say one auction house might have a different fee structure than another auction house in like a different state, and you might have to end up like calling them up to see exactly what the fee would be for that car, which is different than some other platforms. Let's say like ACV auctions for one, where it's just one standard price regardless of wherever you're buying the car from in America. So that part I don't love too much. And the next con for Manheim is that some auctions, they are that way where you can only put the car in reverse. I know for their auction there is probably reasons behind this. I believe there are things like, let's say if the car has problems and, you know, the dealer or the auction doesn't want to really risk, you know, you potentially driving the car around and having some, I don't know, maybe the car might blow up on its own or something like that, you know, while you're driving the car around. You know, just different things like that could come up, of course, as the auction. It could be a risk to them. But of course for the dealers like us, like it just makes it a lot higher of a risk if you can't even take the car through a couple of gears and drive. Like you just take a lot more risk than you wouldn't need to if you're able to drive the car around through the lot and all as well. Okay, and now for the next con for Manheim, it's just that it could be very intimidating for beginners. I mean, I remember when I first started, let's say if you go to an auction and you have, you know, like 40 cars to check out because, you know, there's like 4,000 cars that's there in the auction. It could be tough just trying to check out all those cars in time before the bidding starts for the cars. And then along with that, I mean, you start seeing everybody raising their hands up as well when they're bidding on the cars. The auctioneer is talking like extremely fast, you can't even understand them. Like it could just be a very high stress situation if you're just starting with things. Of course, after we talk about the cons and everything, I'm also still gonna give you guys a good way to be able to know exactly what cars you can go for and what could be in your budget and everything to make that process a lot easier if you're a beginner. But still, as a whole, it is just a little bit more of an advanced platform to use. Now for the next con for Manheim, it's just that it's a lot of competition that's gonna be there. I mean, just because this is like the main platform for getting cars for most dealers in America, that also means that, you know, there's just a lot of dealers there, you know, people that's been in the business for years, you know, whether there be like just little used car lots around the area or like big dealers, you know, that are like Honda dealers or something like that, or Toyota dealerships, stuff like that. They're all going to be there, so it could be tough to really try to get a good car in spots like that. I would say there are times where you might have better success actually going to a local dealer auction that's not one of these like big auction types that's around you, where, you know, you might have less cars that's going through, but you also might have a lot less competition as well. And the last con for Manheim, and probably realistically the biggest one, is just that you need to have a dealer's license to be able to go to this auction. There's just not much ways around that. You know, Copart, it was different, anyone could jump into it. Manheim, this is an auction house that's specifically for dealers for used car lots. That's really the only way you can get access to an auction like this. But just backing up for a second, I would say my overall thing is, again, just using both of them. Like, I mean, if you're just getting started, you don't have a lot of money to especially get into like having your own dealer's license or investing to be able to have that type of opportunity. Of course, you need to start from somewhere. So Copart, if you don't want to go through like private sale and everything, could still be a decent option. I would say just potentially going for like one good car flip, and you can get for really cheap as well. And honestly, once you get like that one or two good flips, as soon as possible, I would try to start transitioning to be able to get into something like Manheim with having your own dealer's license and stuff. And now for just a good strategy to be able to go into an auction, whether it be Copart or Manheim, and to know exactly what cars you could bid on, what cars you could afford, different things like that. The main strategy, first of all, would just be picking a budget to stick around. It doesn't matter if you have like just $1,000 to spend or if you have $10,000 to spend. Even if you did have $10,000 to spend, you can't just be looking at every single car under that. You'll still be checking out like hundreds of cars, which won't really work too well for you. So let's say if you have $10,000 to spend, potentially just going for something that's like $8,000 or $7,000 to $10,000 as a budget for the car would be fine. And then along with that, after you pick a good budget, it's also knowing exactly what cars could kind of fall into that budget or not. And that is kind of the tough thing realistically with auctions, where, you know, every car could potentially start from like $0 and just go up to whatever from there. So the best thing I would really suggest is to look at what the MMR, let's say, would be for that car, or let's say if it's a platform like Copart, seeing what the average price of that car would sell for on that platform. And then basically, if your budget is around $500 from whatever that average price is for that platform, then I would say it's a potential thing where you could get that car. But as I mentioned, along with that, I'm doing a training next week. We're going to be going a lot deeper into other auction strategies just like this one, and then also again diving deep into how you can get into dealer auctions like Manheim and stuff without having your own dealer's license and your own dealership as well. So make sure you register for that training. Let me know in the comments below which auction you like more between Manheim or Copart, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.